Thank you for tuning in. How are we doing today? Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Super sunny and hot day in here in Madrid. So yeah.
Ooh, we like it. We like it. Here, hold on. I'm gonna send a couple minutes to sharing this out. Pauline, if you don't mind sharing this with the Myosin chat, I'll share this out here. Boom, boom. Bets, you can see in our group chat what we're chatting about there. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Let me share it with one more. And then one last one. All right. I think I'm good to go. We good to go?
Good to go.
All right. GTG, we're good to go. All right. Well, welcome everyone. This is Chain Reactions, the weekly live stream and podcast hosted by Myosin.xyz. Yours truly, Blake, and Paulina, my co-host. How you doing, Paulina?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. And really excited because I think today we have a special guest. We have Bettina on today. She is a recent Myosin member, recent Myosin guild lead for DevRel, but she has an incredible background that goes beyond DevRel. Really excited to dive into it, talk about her journey, talk about the crypto space, and just how that's been going in general, and kind of her insights on what's happening. So welcome, Bettina. Yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for that intro. It's very positive. Yeah, I'm doing great. I was just it's actually super warm here. I'm in Madrid. But yeah, no, it's been awesome since I've joined Myosin, and I'm super happy to be here and talking a little bit more about, I guess, the importance of DevRel, specifically in the Web3 space, and also how that connects to marketing. Because I guess this is a new side of Myosin, talking about engineering and the technical side of things. But yeah, it's super important as well, with crypto projects, because at the end of the day, they're so hard to understand that marketing and marketers also need to kind of like really learn all of these quirks that crypto has that is really not easy. So yeah, I'm here to kind of bridge both.
So true. I would be awesome to just, to get to know you a little bit more. Like, how did you get into Web3 and then, DevRel, in general?
Yeah. So I got into crypto not in like the crypto maxi way. So I wasn't in some like obscure community in 2016 or 2015. I actually got into blockchain through research at my university. I was doing research in like self-sovereign identities at Imperial College. And it was actually because my family is originally from Venezuela. And like the 19, 20-year-old me naively thought that I could fix the problem of people not having a passport, basically, when there was a massive exodus because of, uh, political issues in the country. Well, massive political issues in the country. And so all of these people were fleeing to neighboring countries without any documentation. So, no way of proving that they had a career, that they had all this ownership of anything. And I felt like this was incredibly unjust, that just because you live in a country where for some reason the government now is under a dictatorship, or there's like instability, it just means that you lose so many things, like your degree means nothing, or your ownership of anything that you've had before, you've been building for years, means nothing. And these people were in like super hard positions. And that's kind of how I got into the industry of Web3 and why I'm still here, because I really think that blockchain or distributed ledgers have the possibility of building better futures for people who really need it, live like not depend on a government, like not in an anarchic way, but more in like a
Mhm.
progressive way, that people can take ownership of their lives, and whether that's through their account, so they can if a token, if the currency in their country is unstable, they can transact with tokens or any of that, have self-serving identities, etc. I guess at the time it was like very early to be doing research on this. It was like back 2019, 2020.
Mhm.
And even zero knowledge proofs, which is what I kind of started getting into,
Uh,
was super slow at the time. So I was writing research papers on this, and
you're ahead of the
self-sovereign
trend.
identities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Ahead of the trend for once. I should have stayed in the space and then whoop. Um, but I decided to move to industry after that and actually start working on like tangible products. And I kind of got into like um, connected with a lot of DAOs like ApeCoin DAO,
Yeah.
Aragon, Bankless, at the time, DevDAO.
Yeah.
And I was actually working on like creating like profiles and identities for them. So very connected to what I was doing research on. But it was during this time that I realized that it was super hard because I was working as a full stack engineer. Like I was
Mhm.
building these platforms for them that um there is a lot of gaps in the documentation, and it's super hard to build as a developer. And even being in the DevDAO community, like there's a lot of people who were super curious to learn and know more about like how to build in Web3. But even for me, like the learning curve was like, oh wow, distributed ledgers are interesting. And then it's like, okay, what are oracles, what is smart
Mhm.
contracts, now learn Rust and Solidity, and now move. And now like this is EVM compatible and non-EVM compatible, and like each of these things have quirks, and now
Wait,
each
you're telling me
protocol.
crypto's not super easy to build in? Like, and then what?
Yeah,
This-
so it was like during that time that I started writing like about just very simple stuff like what is EVM and how do you build with that in mind. Sorry, what is um yes, EVM compatible chains and non, and how do you build with that in mind, or MEV? I was just thinking, did I say MEV or EVM? Getting confused. But also MEV, and specifically because I then moved into DeFi, like how to make sure that your customers don't end up with a crazy sandwich or something like that. And as I wrote more, I saw like the more of a need of people that kind of could understand the code and loved building, but also could explain it in plain English and were excited to just even show their face and go through a tutorial and hands-on kind of like, hey, I built this end-to-end app, because a lot of the docs were super theoretical. And I was missing a lot of like, well, this is how you have a little app, and this is where you put your wallet, and now you have a wallet integration on your, I don't know, NFT app. And there was missing a lot of this kind of explanations. So yeah, that's how I got into Web3, crypto, and DevRel. Obviously, it's been like a long journey.
Yeah. So you started with a lot of research and a lot of like working on the docs, right? What would you say, like for everyone to sort of um, know more about like what goes into a proper like DevRel operation, like what goes into attracting devs to build on your in like product, right?
Yeah. Um, I think, and actually, I was discussing about this on a Twitter thread the other day, because they were saying how DevRel is almost like a fad title and is gonna like stop existing in 2 years. And one of the main reasons that I was trying to explain how maybe the title developer relations might cease to exist, but not the role itself, is because specifically for open source projects, specifically in blockchain, where there is a lot of theory, as we were just saying, and it's quite technical. There is a very large kind of learning curve from the theory and what is being built when it comes to infrastructure to the builders that are now going to use that infrastructure and kind of convert it into cool applications with different things, right? And this is not just like a Web3 title. Like if you think about it, you have DevRels in things like AWS, and people that build with AWS is not even like super technical software engineers, right? And it's interesting how, you know, the people who are building the infrastructure are not the ones that are explaining how AWS specifically works, and are going to be like, well, you know, this is how this server is built, and this is how we're have a load balancer doing all this different stuff, like jargon that you don't even need to know. So for me, therefore, whatever the title is, it is the same in Web3. It's like we need to theoretically understand all the things that are going on, actually probably have built a bunch of these things and gone through the pain of understanding how it goes, and make it as easy to understand for like anyone, not even developers, like anyone should understand these things. And so DevRel kind of has a lot of different parts of it. Specifically, depends on the cycles in Web3. So some of them are more community building and kind of showcasing the technology. Some of them is more like building yourself and getting others, almost like cold messaging others to build. Um, Depends on the cycle. It depends on how big the protocol is and how new it is. It's very different to be working on like Polygon versus like a protocol that's been up in like the past year.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it's a very tailored approach depending on, I mean, it's such as marketing, right? The GTM strategy would be very different depending on like where you are. So it makes a lot of sense. But if we were to kind of identify like, you know, the broader picture of what it consists of, is a very like education is at the foundation of it all, right? And then there are different channels on how to like communicate it outwards, pretty much. And I feel like, I mean, from a lot of people would say that it's hackathons, like DevRel equals hackathons or something like this, right? Which is obviously like not true, and there's so much more behind it that would actually result in the hackathon being successful going forward and the whole operation being successful. So you know, with everyone needing developers to build on their new fancy infrastructure, how do you know, how do you stand out? How do you get their attention? How do you, you know, like grants, bounties, all that sort of stuff, obviously. But are there, you know, ways or maybe trends that you're seeing now that differ from what we've seen like 2-3 years ago?
Yeah. I think there's like several questions there, and maybe I didn't summarize properly the end of my last answer, but it is spot on what you were saying, how it is like an educational role with driving adoption, taking feedback, and also kind of funneling it to marketing or like founding teams or whatever it is, and part evangelism, I guess, as well. Um, I guess when it comes to how do you attract developers nowadays, and kind of like the now versus then as well, you were asking. I think there's a lot of different things that have changed. Obviously, the Web3 space changes so fast. Like there's trends that are not trends anymore that were 3 months ago. And so it's the same with DevRel. You were mentioning hackathons, grants, bounties. I think hackathons like 3 years ago were like golden, you know? you probably had a lot of really interested people going into these hackathons. The technology still felt really new, even like 4 years, 5 years ago. I myself love going to hackathons. I was in the, I guess, the London startup hackathon like arena back in 2020, from like 2019-18 to like 2022 or so, and it was super fun. And also like there were the top people from, I don't know, Near Protocol that were coming and explaining things to you, and the tracks were very like um I don't know, like a bit more theoretical, and there were a lot of like, oh, we're building these cool things here and there. Why I don't think it works nowadays. I mean, some hackathons can work, but the general idea of hackathon doesn't work nowadays, for example, is because the tracks are very generalist. And I think this is also an approach that I think is incorrect when it comes to DevRel. It's like we're doing like everything. We're doing RWAs and we're doing IP and we're doing like pets and we're doing and this is like a singular protocol. And so as DevRels, like they don't even know where to start building, right? So I think whereas before maybe that worked a little bit better because blockchain was still nascent and the technology was nascent and people were more like doing like research and theoretical projects. Now it's more like a lot more niche. Don't open just like a massive Discord with 6,000 topics. Like create Telegram chats that are like specific or targeted to specific devs, and message them directly. Hey, like we're trying to build this initiative for RWA, and like I've heard like you've worked on this kind of projects before, and that's why where a DevRel also comes like is important, because a lot of us have network and have been developers ourselves before, have gone to hackathons, have friends that code in and or are building different projects. And I think right now it's almost going back to the 2000s where it's just cold emailing, niche like TG, chats or hackathons that have a very specific like um track. It's like we're building this agent for um I don't know, like something to do with DeFi. So it's like taking information from an oracle and you're doing like some trading strategy. I'm
Like
inventing
every
this right
agent
now.
ever right now.
Yeah, I guess so. But I think my point is, I think the then versus now is like the then it was a lot easier to sell to a builder this general idea of like we're gonna build something great, whereas builders now want um they want better onboardings. They're not gonna do with some random docs that don't explain
No.
how to find and install a package. They're not gonna be happy if there's like 80 different tracks and they don't even know where to choose from. Even if it's a grant, they're like, okay, there might be 2,000 other people applying for this. You don't know, right? And it might not even resonate with you. So yeah, there was a lot to unpack on that question.
I'm thinking like also from the developer perspective, like let's say I want to build something and I know that I want to build something like on the blockchain, where, as someone as a transitioning from maybe like web 2 to web 3, like I want to support the technology, where do I even start? Like, for example, I'm thinking also from the perspective of founders, let's say, with the rise of like AI, tools like Cursor and things like that. What are sort of and I think that there will be a lot more like Web3 AI developer tools soonish, if not already, that would help make that onboarding more streamlined. And it feels like a missing kind of piece that a lot of also, projects could have to assist the newly transitioned devs. Where do they go? Where can I find these people? Let's say, where do they hang out?
Yeah.
And
Go
real
on.
quick on this one. And on this one, I want to also chime in and mention that I think, Bettina, you had a really good article, was it a couple weeks ago, talking about the state of how many devs there are in Web3 and crypto, and how if you look at the absolute numbers, they're going down, right? So I think very much tied into that, it's this question of like, how are we onboarding more people when as you said, it's an increasingly competitive marketplace, and the only way to break through is kind of like niche down. So I don't know, just adding a bit of context there. I'm curious as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So several things. I think the first one, it's quite funny that you mentioned about that tool, because I'm currently building that on the side.
It's an
Um,
accidental. Yeah.
it's,
Well,
it's
tell us more of that. Yeah, tell us.
Not
this
planned.
this wasn't. I was not coming with the intention to talk about this, in fact, because it's incredibly early stages, but it's one of the main pain points that I see with Web3, and I don't think that it's that people wouldn't understand, or wouldn't want to build something in Web3. Is more, I think they're very scared of the learning curve that crypto kind of feels like. It feels, because it was like that, right? And there was like a million things to learn. I think there still is, but I think with the help of um, AI tools, you can make that onboarding much easier. Not even for building like the apps, but I think generally for people to get into Web3. I think there's been a lot of, sadly, misinformation, and like a lot of the rug pulls and the kind of,
Yeah.
incomplete projects, and people that haven't done the honest thing with crypto have spoken louder than a lot of the projects that are very genuinely building something extremely relevant for, I guess, the future of many. um so I think that is one. So what I am building is more of like an AI learning tool for developers that is way more visual. It's not just like, here's your D app. It's more like, this is what a wallet is, and this is what a fee means, and this is why there's different protocols. And, given your
Mhm.
application and what you want to build, this protocol
Mhm.
makes more sense than this other one. And it'll understand and take the information from all the docs, and try to have like more of a fun onboarding experience, which is what I was talking about before. Like, devs don't want to like go through 150 pages of theory, and that's for like every single protocol, right? And so it's more like, how by blocks do you connect these different things, make blockchain a little bit more interpretable, which is part of what
Mhm.
I think is going to bring a lot more web to devs into Web3, if we really kind of collaborate,
Mhm.
protocols collaborate, which we're seeing little by little, making a little bit more interpretable, allowing developers to um, have more of like a easier understanding of the fundamentals, that they can play with a lot of different protocols.
Mhm.
Um, it's a journey. It's not going to be immediate. There are a lot of like more immediate things that I think founders can do, and that is really think about like, you know let's not just write docs because we have to have docs. Think about a cool onboarding experience that people are gonna be like, oh my god, this is super, like, this is kind of fun to build. Give them little
Yeah.
things, like give them, and like, I really like, and this is not DevRel, it was marketing, but it was the boundless white paper. And there's a lot of people that don't read white papers, or they'll like read a little bit and be like, yeah, I read it,
Nobody
but most
fucking
people don't.
reads.
No, nobody reads it.
Yeah.
And it was, I know her Twitter handle, but it's like
Reka.
Reka ETH. Yeah, Reka.
Reka.eth. Yeah, she's great.
I think
Yeah.
she did an amazing job, and having that NFT that you could share on Twitter, great example of like incentivizing people to read a technical paper. You can do the same thing with developer documentation, but it's like handhold them. It's like people
Mhm.
don't want to handhold the builders that are coming in, that are gonna probably change the economics of their protocol, because it seems like, oh, I don't know what to say to them. I don't know what to
Mhm.
explain. Like, just TikTok tutorials. Like,
Yeah.
I think it doesn't have to be that crazy. It's like, I get so many IG reels and TikToks about like people using AI tools, we could do the same with Web3 tools. And obviously it's going to be in bite size because it's a bit more technical, but I want to see more of that and like understand that if you want more of the Web2 developers and the younger generations to come in, we need to do the same as what's happening with AI. Like, look at all the cool, like you can do like a passport app with your friends and like see all of the different places that you've gone to, but it's like only between our friends because it's like our decentralized like passport app. I don't know, something like that. I'm inventing it, and this wouldn't be that hard to build. Like it wouldn't. There's more and more tools in Web3 that wouldn't make it like crazy hard to build. And I know we're still thinking about all the trends like RWA and others, which is great. But it's also, I mean, for me in the builder side, it's like people want to build fun apps, like show that you can make a decentralized note taking app just because. Same with AI, like just because, like let's make it fun again, you know? So I think that's a little bit of where I'm at.
I think that there should be like a Tinder kind of thing, matching devs to protocols, like depending on what they want and what the protocol has going for it.
Make DevRel fun again. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what
Where
I
to
say?
build.
What I will say is I think a great example, it's less like DevRel, but more like being a dev fun, is shout out to Alex Poon and the Scout Game team, because I think what they're doing is really interesting because it's basically like fantasy football, but for devs. So the whole idea is that like, and they were a previous guest on the pod, so I don't remember what episode, but you can go back and check it out. But the TLDR is, yeah, everyone has different points and you can bet, and then there's like a whole token involved on, you know, how much. I think it's tied to like their GitHub repo, as well as, you know, what kind of bounties they're fulfilling. So like that's an interesting example. But I really love that TikTok like Reels idea that you just brought up, Bettina. Like, are there, I guess here's a question, and I know this is we're gonna kind of get into this a little bit later as well, but who would you say, like Boundless is one, so shout out to Raika on that one. But like, who do you think, what are the companies or protocols or projects that you think like have been doing it well and have the most interesting examples? If there are any that come to mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big one, and they're way more serious, is Eigenlayer. But I think, I mean, they have Nadir Debit. I might not be pronouncing his name properly.
He's on my X every fucking day. Yeah.
he's great. I think most DevRels will look up to him. But you know, he's done a great job. But if you think about it, it's because he's very hands-on. Like he built stuff himself. He's built stuff in the past. He's gone through writing all of the tutorials. He was obviously involved with DevDAO. So I think it's a great example. But I also, if you look at some of the initiatives with Eigenlayer, they're doing a little bit of like, you know, they have cohorts. So it's not just like you're onboarding a builder, you have a cohort. And people really like the whole VC, like kind of YC idea. So that's also something like if some protocols have a bit more money, it's like, let's take this, and this is what I'm saying, more niche and more hand holding, instead of just going out there and be like, we have grants for all of these things, create a cohort and give them like all the necessary tools to make them succeed with some incredible applications. So you start getting the traction that will make other people follow as well. And you'll have another cohort, and you'll also create FOMO, because it's not just like anyone can build this. Like, we're selecting the best people for this thing, and you need to apply, and we're gonna give you the tools, right? So it's like reversing the mindset here, almost a bit scarcity. I think another one that have been doing it well, specifically because I've been working a lot in data privacy, is Nillion. And I think they have a bit more of like the fun feeling, and they have, I mean, their events are super fun.
Nillion. Yeah.
Yeah. I have I've worn the sweatshirt and gone skiing, and people were like, "What is Nillion?" And I was like, So their merch is cool, and this is something that like when I've gone to their events, they have a lot of super smart students. Like
Yeah.
I was in the US, and to their events there was like Stanford students, MIT
Mm,
students. It looks like it's like their target market, which I think is awesome. Um, but they're doing more like little like Loom videos showcasing like, hey, this is how our uh private key, it was like a video I saw, like their private key works,
mhm.
and there's like a little video and it shows how it works. So I think they're doing pretty well on DevRel. And
I
by the
think they're
way, they were still
streaming.
building this feature.
They were streaming
Yeah,
on Twitter, I
streaming.
think, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Um, so I think those are good. I quite like story protocol. But I think in the DevRel side of thing, like they're building it, but I think they're building quite a lot of FOMO, making it feel quite cool. Again, where they were exposing is the Stanford like blockchain event, and there was a lot of student asking questions about it, like, oh yeah, I think IP is really important because this and that. um so it's like the difference. I think eigenlayer is way more serious, or uh go to developer instead of go to market, go to developer. Their go to developer is a little bit more of experience, I would say, because they're a layer. um and so they're more looking into, I guess, interoperability and other things like that. But yeah, I would go with those three examples.
So how do you like? I think it's a bit of a hard question, but how do you solve the cold start problem? Kind of like it sounds like the university events could be one thing if you get to speak on one of those, but what is it really like you need to do to get that initial traction, if there's anything, except for
Yeah.
committing Myosin, of course.
Yeah, of course. I think people underestimate the usefulness of a cold message. Like, you can find people on LinkedIn that are tagged as Web3 developers or blockchain developers, and some might already have a full-time job, but a lot of these people are also interested on um, spending some of their weekend time, or this is a developer thing. We enjoy working for free on open source projects, so I think people need to sometimes take advantage on this, positioned in the right way. Not
Make it
everyone,
fun.
but make it fun. And it's like, I think people would appreciate if you're not going to get 100% like all answers to every single message you send. Also, like, think about maybe connecting with some of the DAOs that are specifically for developers, like DevDAO, like Raid Guild. There's loads, and like, okay, maybe there will not be the builders that will be stay committed for forever, but if you want to start having traction, um re, kind of like aliving your GitHub community, which is important, so you start having contributors and contributor tags, and you can have levels on your Discord and all of these things. You can just start messaging them, hey, I think this idea of building this product, not just like build a product, is like, I have this idea. We specialize on microtransactions, or we specialize on AI agents, or we specialize on whatever it is. And you message them with an idea, like how you'd like to build it. Let's do it together. I'm going to give you like free, like I'm going to give you tokens, or I'm going to give you this credit so you can, kind of build for free. And you're going to be like one of the first contributors. And you're giving them the opportunity to be one of the first contributors to an open source project. That's, for example, one. And it feels very small, but that's where you cold start. You get your first builders in, and you also actually build a partnership with them that is probably gonna be hard to break. Like, they're probably gonna be on the Discord server in 3 years' time answering
Yeah.
questions because they feel ownership of what they've built, and so I think that's a good way to start.
This is that's a really great insight, and I think it ties into so many things. I mean, it's so funny, like we talk about like DevRel is just a different form of marketing, in my opinion, because it's really just, instead of marketing consumers, you're trying to market people to help build a protocol or project or whatnot. And I think something we've talked about, Simon and I give these like go-to-market presentations all the time to early stage teams. And one of the things we say is you're talking about when you're early stage, it's like you may not have massive amounts of resource, right? And maybe you do, right? But in the best case, like it's that hand-to-hand combat, like you're talking about, that ability to go out, cold email people, give them that bespoke feeling of, hey, I'm the founder of this thing. And who knows, that thing might become really big. They may end up raising a $10-20 million round in 3 months. You never know, right? And as you said, then it's about like social reputation, ownership, giving them those things. And then I guess it's so funny. I say it's the magic of Web3, but I guess really for dev, it's just the magic of open source building in general. That's direct to community, right? This idea that you can build and launch something from nothing, and then your users are your community actually feels that sense of ownership. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Curious for the hackathons also, you said that a few years ago they were like the thing. What has changed now, and are they still, a good acquisition tactic?
Well, it sounds like
or
they're
at what
niching
stage
down,
are they?
but yeah, tell us more.
Yeah, so I think it's not like hackathons don't work at all nowadays. I mean, I still love hackathons, like being myself in a hackathon. There's actually the story build-a-thon happening right now. It started today, and I got cold message to join, for instance,
Let's
giving an
go.
example. And I thought it was super interesting, so I'll probably be building something there. And I still think that some hackathons definitely work, but you need to be careful on how you organize it. I think it became so popular, like the thing to do, that I think people weren't putting enough thought on like how to make it a little bit different, how to make people really want to like convert those ideas or like little projects that people were working on into actual committed developers or teams that are going to build. And obviously, as I was saying earlier, how the landscape of Web3 has changed. Obviously, the landscape to commit those developers is going to change. It's not like you're going to give them 3,000 in a random token and they're going to be like, great, let's build this. Let's spend 5 months building this. And so I think it's one niching down a little bit or niching it up like crazy. Like for example, one of this AI well, I'm joining as well. Another like AI hackathons are a great example of something that really works, but make it like crathon. So you're gonna build the biggest vibe-a-thon that is ever gonna happen. Is the boat hackathon, and everyone is talking about it, right? So make it's gonna be like 1 million in prizes, and you're building a community around it. So there's events everywhere in the world. So it's not just like it's a digital hackathon. You have in real life events, and now you're getting ambassadors for free that want to host these events because they want to be part of the community that you didn't have before in all the city, like in most of the cities in the world. And you're gonna probably like partner with a bunch of people that are gonna give some money and packages to everyone that is applied for the hackathon. Obviously this is like at a very large scale because they are putting a lot of money behind this, but I think that works. Or like the very kind of niche down, like
well that it makes so much sense, right? You can't just be like the middle. It's always like, what is marketing, but you want to stand out from the pack. So to stand out from the pack, you can't just do the same thing. You have to, as you said, really big or really specific. Those are two best options. On this idea of global communities or going really big and thinking about that actually kind of triggered a different thought, which is like geography, basically. And I think even for us at Myosin, like we've always thought global, but I think right now like we're thinking a lot about LATAM. I know a lot of other like companies and protocols we've been talking to are thinking about that. Curious if you have any hot takes on, I mean, you don't speak for every single dev in the world, right? But at least from your perspective and the communities you're in, how do you feel, I guess, about like bullish or bearish, I guess, on more dev adoption within crypto and blockchain within whether it's LATAM or other regions that people should be thinking about that maybe they're overlooking? Because I think people are really starting to get to this, at least in my world, right? Like I come from the US and it's very like Western oriented. And I think a lot of the crypto market tends to be Western oriented. But I think in just this past year, it feels like a lot of people are like, oh, we should go to Asia. And so there's a lot more buzz around Korea. And now this year, I feel like there's a lot more buzz around, now we got Dev Connect in Argentina coming up in November. So a lot of people like LATAM and things like that. But curious to hear someone who's deep in it. You're on the ground. Like, what are you hearing? What are you feeling? Any hot takes?
Yeah, I'm quite bullish on that, and I think they're underserved markets because almost, if not all, documentation is in English,
Yeah.
and we can't just expect like it is true that a lot of people in let's just take Latam do speak English as their second language, but Spanish is obviously the first language, and there's definitely people that don't know English or aren't as comfortable, specifically when it comes to building something technical. Um, so I am definitely bullish, specifically because crypto. Uh, I was gonna say like crypto rails, like basically
Yeah.
blockchain serves like a real utility there because I mean, again, I was speaking
Yeah.
from personal experience, but
That's how you
um,
got started. Yeah.
yeah, it's not surprising that, like, for example, in El Salvador,
Hmm.
um, there's a big initiative, and Bitcoin is, I think, part of the Federal Reserve, and then they
Yep.
can transact with it, etc., etc. And there's a lot more initiatives because sadly enough, it's like the South American like curse or something, but countries go up and go down
Ah,
and governments are unstable, and like it's a beautiful place and I'd love to go back and live there, but it can be hard sometimes, specifically
yep.
because you might build a business and 2 months later, a new governor came, and now you need to shut down because it's
Yep.
impossible because of inflation or whatever. So it serves a real purpose. There's definitely people that want to build there. I think there's just uh, a bit of an overlook from, I guess,
Yeah.
the Western developers or even DevRel communities that we all do stuff in English. I mean, I speak Spanish, obviously, that's actually my first language. So that is something that I'm also kind of really like taking a look into, and like, how do we create more Spanish content? I think another region is Africa, and it's another
Mm,
great example of somewhere where blockchain really serves like a big utility, and there's people
yep.
that already transact on like crypto rails basically, or have or use crypto for living on their day-to-day life. Obviously, it's not everyone, but it's like they've gone past almost the normal currency into using blockchain. I'm less knowledgeable of that region because I'm more in Latam. I speak Spanish and stuff, but I know it's quite important. One that I was also like exposed to from being the head of developer relations at Partisia Blockchain was a number of communities in Asia, specifically in
Mm,
Japan. They're very open. I mean, they're very open to innovation and specifically to blockchain. And not just when it comes to like having it as a token that you can transact, but also actually using it for data privacy,
mm,
for um, for IoT, so for like cars, for a lot of
yeah.
different things, for anything that has to do with data, which is super important. So yeah, a bunch of communities that I think people don't talk to that much about, that I think are actually gonna be surpass the number of
Yeah.
developers that we have, I guess, in the Western world or whatever we want to call it.
I like that. Yeah. Bullish Japan, bullish Africa, bullish Latam. Because
Yeah.
I think just speaking to that, right? Like I think it just makes sense. Like when I try and convince my friends in New York, like about crypto, like, well, I have Venmo, I have PayPal, I have Zelle, I have, like the whole world runs on the dollar, and like in the US, the payment rails are good enough, right? But as you're saying, it's in these other countries or regions, for many reasons, there's instability and payment challenges, maybe, I guess is the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add something that actually connected the hackathons with kind of like new regions and how to onboard these people. And I
Hmm.
think some of the interesting ideas that I mean I would like to see implemented and I want to work on is
Yeah.
um, thinking of this hackathons more as like the possibilities to create mini incubators and
Mm.
make them more regional. Like you're going to Argentina and you travel, you go to different cities and you have this IRL hackathons where you actually have people speaking in Spanish. Um, with different tracks, and for you use it more as a selection of people that you're gonna get taken to your first like mini DAO incubator or something, and
Mm.
you now have your Latam community created. You have your first cohort of builders. You're giving them the resources, you're building with them your Spanish community as well. Like they can be the part of the people that build your docs
Yeah.
in Spanish and start building the tutorials. Yes, it takes money, you have to have someone in whichever. I'm saying Argentina because there's Dev Connect going on, and so there's going to be more people going there. But that's a way of thinking of hackathons that work to incentivize your community in a niche way, for instance.
I love
And
that. It's more thoughtful that way.
and this is quite interesting because what I'm hearing from you, Bettina, is like it's more like this transition from, it's not just, because I think what you're getting at is, and what Polina also mentioned is like there's this kind of like weird drop off point that happens where you have this hackathon, they like come in, they hack, and then it's like, what next?
Yeah.
But it's almost like this convergence of where protocols or projects, they're not VCs, but it's like kind of like every VC eventually was like, well, we offer hands-on support, and we're like, we can help you with marketing, we can help you with funding, whatever. So it's almost like,
Mm.
are we headed towards a world where everyone is effectively becoming like not a VC, but it's like you did your hackathon and now it's an incubator. Now we're going to give you support. It might be the right way. I don't know, because as you're saying, it's more involved. It builds a longer term relationship, better incentive alignment.
It feels like a
Yeah.
more like a hand holding one-on-one, only in smaller groups. So the success rate should be, I mean, ultimately higher. Plus, like Bettina said, like they feel part of the process. I mean, it's,
because you're giving grants anyways, right? But what you're effectively saying is we'll give you a grant, but just more accountability, more involvement. So you don't just take our money and just run with it and then go farm the next protocol or project, right? Because that's such a common issue.
Yeah. I think we should move on to the fire round now.
Yes, we should move on. Hold on, let me see. Wait, I have one more. I actually have a meeting as well, but I can run late after this. If you don't mind. But I guess I'm very curious to hear this one last question. Just like, what trends are you seeing? Like, what's changing? Like, are you seeing anything from a kind of like developer DevRel point of view, and like where devs are gravitating towards, into whether it's protocol, whether it's topic areas? What's the hot news or any insights there? I'm curious.
Yeah. I think because you mentioned before that I've written about how developers are kind of like moving away from Web3 and stuff. I think devs have become more picky. Not because they're money grubbing and they just want to do bountings and stuff, but it's more because several things that I actually mentioned on that article as well. But it's like the learning curve, which we've talked about here, the instability of some protocols that also want to pay in their token. When they're just starting, it's super hard, and if you're not giving them like a one-to-one, etc., it's like they don't know who they're talking to. They don't know if you're gonna get rug pulled. They don't know if they're gonna build something and nothing's gonna happen after that. So I think devs are, as I said, they're becoming more picky. They want to see interoperability. They want to see more fun onboardings, like easier to understand. Where are they using new tech? Like, where are they building with AI in mind, for instance? Or like, they don't want to see an old website, super technical docs, unless
Yeah.
there's like a really proven track record that, there's
Yeah.
something meaningful behind it. They want to see good tooling, like the SDK actually works, and there's
Yeah.
someone or some people being contributing to it, at least in the last month.
Right.
So I think it's like tooling, good tooling. There's a trust factor, so it's not like this completely unstable and you're saying that you're going to pay me this, but by the end of the month you might not pay me anything. There's a
Yeah.
layer of interpretability, so it's not like my app that I'm building here, unless it's just a money grab bounty that I'm
Yeah.
going to build. I might be able to use it somewhere else. Also, interpretability normally means that, for example, you're EVM compatible, so you don't need to learn all the quirks of some kind of
Right.
random new protocol, for
Yeah.
instance. And then
So you
maybe,
don't want to have to learn Haskell and other just like sorry,
I
I
mean,
couldn't help
who's
it.
using
Yeah.
Haskell? What?
Ask anyone
Um,
building in Cardano, all two of them.
oh
Sorry,
yeah,
Cardano.
true, sorry.
Got a little
I
spicy there.
forgot.
Anyways, back to you.
Haskell was like first year computer science is like, let's start with theory, and have not
Yeah.
touched it since. Sorry. Anyway, um, it's very clean language. I would just say that. Anyway, yeah, and I guess the last one is like there is some sort of community. Like I think if the community is completely dead, you're gonna get more
Yeah.
like bounty grabbing people. But you need to
Yeah.
start somewhere, right? So that's where
It's
you
always a
do the
catch-22. Yeah.
cold emailing and other things. So yeah.
I love it.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Thank
All
you.
right. I think that's a great way to wrap things up. Yeah, Polina, if you want to take rapid fire questions, we do this.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think we'll just take a few because of the time
Yeah.
shortage. So the first one would be, what is the and I think you kind of answered that already, but what is the most underrated, let's say, marketing tactic to in Web3, and maybe to attract the devs, like, right, if we're marketing to devs, like, what is the underrated tactic?
Yeah. I think it really depends on how big or where down the line your protocol is. Like, do you have a testnet or not even? Are you already have mainnet and some people building on it? Are you starting to build your community? And so depending on that, I would say, like, for example, cold messaging, underrated for people that are starting. Gamified experiences, underrated for much bigger protocols. One-to-one and the whole cohort incubator idea, like very big protocols. I think those are like underrated. And I do see some people doing it, but I think those three are underrated, and I would love to see more people doing it. And maybe an underrated one that came up is like chiming into like TikTok and IG and thinking
Yeah.
about more of like, you want to also get your, I don't see like, I'm like the young generation that got into Web3. I don't see younger people than me sometimes. And I want to see like more students. And like, I think they love to see tutorials in this kind of places. So it's like,
You gotta be on
maybe
TikTok, Bettina. You gotta be on TikTok.
I don't have TikTok, in fact. I
She's too smart. Yeah.
Okay, next one. Which brand or project is crushing it now with let's say marketing to devs? Just
yeah,
the
I
first
think
one
we
that comes to mind.
Nillion. I think I just
Okay.
mentioned it before. I think
Yeah.
it's fun.
Billions, well,
Yeah.
million. Yeah. Bullish.
And the last one is looking back, at the past year. What is your biggest learning as a Web3 DevRel marketer?
It's hard. I think it takes a lot of time to prepare for anything, even the smallest grant. It takes
Yeah.
time, and you can't just be like, let's deploy it and they'll come, which was also the old way of thinking. They will not come. No one will come. No one will message. Like, work through your network, build yourself, and have some weeks thinking about like, would I really do this myself? Like I'm a DevRel, I'm talking to devs, but I'm a dev myself. So would I do this myself or not? Okay, let's go with it. And what would make me want to do it? So yeah, there's been some initiatives that obviously haven't stick, some that have brought more devs than had never built in the protocol I was in. And that was the difference, like actually cold messaging people, preparing, building myself some of the projects or part of the projects, giving them examples. So it's like the prep work before. And yeah, thinking that people really still want to help in Web3. Like if you just message on TG, your network sometimes like really just wants to help and build with you. So yeah.
We like it.
Yeah, love that.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
All right, Bettina.
Yeah, no,
this
thank
is
you guys.
incredible.
It's been awesome.
Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for doing all the amazing stuff. And by the way, Bettina, like, how can people find you? What's the call to action? Yeah, you wrote an incredible article that we need to get up on the site immediately. And so we're just working with the content team to get that up. But yeah, how can they find you? What's the thing to look out for, I guess? Yeah.
People can find me on Twitter under Betty's role. I guess we could put it on the description.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where I've started posting about things. I'm also on Medium, and my handle everywhere is betsosu. And I'm quite fast at replying to DM. So if people are curious, same on Discord. You can message me on Discord if people have questions. I actually love yapping about tech and explaining things as best as possible. So yeah.
Bettina, I think we need to get you. Well, and then also we're doing a lot of DevRel stuff. So if you're ever interested in DevRel, Bettina's the one to talk to. And it sounds like we should just get you your own pod, and we should do like a DevRel spinoff of that. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Why not?
I need to be like cut off because sometimes I yap too much. I have so many questions. Like as I was talking, I was thinking of more things to say and more things to ask, and I was like, no, I need to just answer.
Part 2.
Part 2 coming soon.
Awesome.
Okay. All right.
Well,
with all that, thanks to everyone listening. Thank you so much, Bettina, and we'll see you
Thank you,
online, and
guys.
we'll talk to you soon. All right. Ciao, ciao.
That's how.